If you are a fan of Aquaman, then this episode is for you. There's a new Aquaman series out this week, and I just so happen to speak to the writer. It's time for another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Hit the music.
It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC, Batman, Wonder Woman, Marvel, Spider-Man, Image, Spawn, Saga, Boom, Once and Future, Power Rangers, or whatever book or publisher you follow. We cover them all here. This is the place for you. That's right. It's for everyone. This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Let's get it.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host Theo, back with another quick episode for you in this new year and our new season. This time around, I am sitting with writer Jeremy Adams, and we're talking about Aquaman. So I was hoping to talk to Jeremy while we were at Fan Expo this week, but DC said, well, he won't be available, but we can get him on with you now. So this conversation took place actually a few weeks ago in the latter part of December. And again, we were getting ready to talk about the series, which is out this week. And so we don't spill too much considering that the book wasn't out when we had our conversation, but we still had a decent conversation. And while we talked about Aquaman, we also had some time to talk about Green Lantern as well, which he's been doing for over the past year. And it's been really good with Hal and the whole United Planet saga and everything that rolled into Absolute Power. And now the aftermath as we go into All In. So again, this is going to be my quick conversation with Jeremy Adams talking about Aquaman. Again, it is out this coming Wednesday from DC Comics. I had a chance to read it, and I thank DC for that preview copy. I think for you Aquaman fans out there, you would be very excited to see Arthur back in play in his role as King of Atlantis. Now, before I get into the interview, just a few things. There were a few glitches in the recording where Jeremy froze, but we were able to get the audio and save that. And again, this is an audio only podcast for this episode. We weren't able to do video with Jeremy, but once that we get back from that, I will give my top 3 books from this past week. And ironically, they are all from DC Comics. DC has really been turning it on, especially since the conclusion of Absolute Power as we've gotten into the All-In initiative that they're doing. Not only from the All-In side, but also from the Absolute Universe with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And you'll see that when I get to my top 3. But again, here is my interview with comic book writer Jeremy Adams talking about Aquaman. And I will see you all on the other side. Jeremy Adams, thank you for joining me today at the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. So if I can get started, before we get into Aquaman, I would shoot myself if I didn't ask you about your time on Green Lantern and how that journey has been getting Hal and the rest of the team really from what they first experienced in everything with the United Planets to where we are now with the aftermath of Absolute Power and as we go into the All-In initiative. How has that been?
It's been a long time coming. When I started Green Lantern, it was very much like, hey, we wanted to keep Hal earthbound and really concentrate on him as a character so that as the more cosmic things start happening and we start taking him out into space, we're really invested in him as a character. And then the things in space just start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when they collide with Philip Kennedy Johnson's awesome John Stewart series, they just get even bigger. And as this year winds down, the book will kind of come to a close for that piece of it. But there will be all these other problems presented. There will be like kind of a new status quo in a way. But it's kind of a relief to get back to some semblance of what's happening. Writing a comic is always a weird thing because you're trying to, at least for me, it's like you're trying to pace it out correctly, and then suddenly there'll be an event, and then you'll have to go back to your thing, and it's once a month. So suddenly you're like, oh, it's been a year. Oh no, it's been two. And you're trying to tell this whole story. But it's really fun because I think we'll get to a spot where, the climax of all the United Planets and the stuff, the space opera that's going on right now is going to be done. And then we're going to enter into a new era, not just with Green Lantern, but the Green Lantern Corps I'm doing with Morgan Hampton going into the new year, which is going to be it's going to be great to have more runway to tell Green Lantern stories and get more people invested and interested in the characters.
Yeah, and I would be it would be crazy of me to not say I'm not excited about the reemergence of the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah, no, I'm
Come
excited. Yeah.
February, I am very excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
But we're here to talk about Aquaman and
Yes.
Aquaman #1 coming out in January. Who is Adam Curry in this world of DC's All In initiative?
Arthur Curry?
Arthur Curry. I'm sorry. Who is Arthur? Who is Arthur Curry in DC's
If I
All
didn't
In
correct you, I'd
initiative?
get in so much trouble. That honestly, that is a big hook for the series. I think that we've got many different versions of Aquaman in the past, and it's been like, whether it's the Jason Momoa or it's the Brave and the Bold cartoon, or it's like, Stoic King Aquaman, the Tarzan Aquaman from Peter Davids. I think that through all of that, I feel like this is a great chance to kind of like explore the inner thought life of who Arthur Curry is. And I think the thing that I keep coming back to is that, hey, he was raised on land and he probably wants to eat a hamburger every once in a while. Like, there are things he probably misses. And I want to know who that character is in his thought life. I want to know what he actually thinks about being king and what he thinks about being a husband and what he thinks about these things. And I think that'll be an interesting piece to really figure out who his character is, because as I read some of the older stuff, there's a lot of amazing stuff. I just feel like I can't get a grasp on who is this guy? Like, what's his quirks? What does he like? What does he doesn't like? I always think back to I think it was in the Justice League International, which was one of my favorite books ever. And they had this thing where I think Shazam or Captain Marvel gave Martian Manhunter an Oreo. I think they call him something else. And you found out that like the Martian physiology makes him addicted to these things, like it's meth or something. And I was like, that's hilarious. That's a piece about Martian Manhunter that weirdly humanizes him in a way that I didn't know I needed. And so adding these little facets to Arthur's character and finding out who he is and why he's doing what he's doing is going to be interesting. And that's going to be a big thrust of the story, is to figure out who he is, because I don't necessarily know. That was something that was really hard for me to get a grasp on. It's like, who is this guy? I know what he can do. I know him as a superhero, but who is he? Which is a different thing. It's like that guy could be a police officer, but what does he do when he goes home? What's his favorite food? What's his favorite television show? Like, those are things I'm interested in. So we'll find out.
So for those who, for some crazy reason, who did not follow Absolute Power and the aftermaths of that, how does the effects of Absolute Power affect Aquaman without spoiling the series too much?
Right. Yeah. So there was a big shift. If you read the All In special, you'll see that Darkseid showed up. A lot of things happened after the Absolute Powers shifted. So now Aquaman has the ability of hydrokinesis. What he can do with that, we don't know necessarily yet, but he is
He's
going to.
basically Mera, more or
Yeah,
less.
yeah, yeah. He's starting to use it. He's not using it as elegant as Mara is. Like, she's been doing this a long time, so she can be more precise. I think he's more like a blunt tool with it. It's like, yeah, I can make this giant thing. I can hit people with water, and that's something he'll figure out over time, I think. But also, you have the All In special showing us a piece. We have Darkseid showing up in that, and I think strands of that are going to carry over into Aquaman. They're going to carry over into a lot of books, and it's going to be a really cool running thread through the DC universe.
So we've seen some of the promotional images that I've seen thus far that Aquaman, there's a small appearance of the League and he quickly moves away from it.
Yeah.
But we see members of the Aqua family. We see God. We see Mera, of course. We see Jackson. How impactful or how influential will they be in the series? Without spoiling, of course.
I mean, I very much purposely show them early on because I think that we are seeing the status quo of Arthur, and then I quickly move that away. And then I rip that away from the reader. Part of the reason I'm doing that is what the future holds. I can't particularly say. I will say that right now I am focused on Arthur Curry. I want to concentrate on him as Aquaman and him as a character because I want people to be invested in that character as we move away of it. I like to concentrate on that character and then build him up and get the reader invested in him as a character. And then I start adding more and more characters to the side and bringing in more and more characters. And that's been a fun thing to be able to do, to where then it's like the run becomes massive. There's just so many characters. It happened in Flash. It was very much about Wally. It had a little bit of Barry, and then it was all about Wally, and then it was like his wife and his kids, and then it was Max Mercury and Ace and like all these other characters. And then same thing with Hal. It's Hal, it's Carol and Hal. It's Green Lantern Corps characters showing up. And that's really, really fun. And I think you can only do that if you have an anchor point, which is the main character of the series. So whether it's Wally, whether it's Hal, in this case, it's Arthur. And so I really want to ground him and really explore him so that if other characters show up, you're not split attention. You're like, I know who Arthur is, so now I can concentrate on this other character and not feel cheated because we spent time with the main character. So
Gotcha.
I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but also I want people to go in with eyes wide open. This is an Aquaman book. This is about Arthur Curry, and that's what we're going to concentrate on.
Okay, and you kind of answered part of my next question is what would you expect for this first arc as far as paving the way for Arthur and the rest of the series?
Yeah, it is really going to be a challenging thing for Aquaman. It's going to really try. I'm trying to write him in a way that's like, this would be so super cool. This is what would make Aquaman a character that I want to read monthly. This would be making him go on this journey. It's like, how do I describe it? It's hard to describe because I think this is something that hasn't necessarily been done with a character that's had such a huge generational impact. So I think I lost the thread of the question.
That's okay. Well, I mean, because I've seen you mention it in other interviews. Aquaman is one of those characters that has always been there
Yeah,
with regards to members of the League. He's always
yeah,
been there, whereas
yeah.
others have come and gone.
Yeah, I think the first arc is really going to set it up. Well, hopefully, I have 3 installments that I believe that the story will be. The first arc is definitely going to be about the potential of who this person is. And there will be some good and there will be some bad. Well, I don't want to say what it'll end in, but I think it will be a big deal. And then we'll get to an idea of who Aquaman is as a hero too. I don't want to spoil anything,
Right.
but it's gonna be my plan for it is, like I said, 3 distinct arcs that are pretty massive in scale.
I'm excited for it. So, if you can, a two-parter. Tell me how the creative room is right now. First, with you and John working on art, and
Right.
I became a true believer in John Timms on Batman Incorporated
Okay. Yeah. I love
that he
Incorporated.
did. Yeah, and so I've been a huge fan ever since that. But how is it in that creative room with the two of you? Then, if you can, touch upon how the overall creative room would look, talking about All in general. With Mark Wade doing
Yeah.
Justice League Unlimited. And so I'm assuming there has to be a lot of collaboration to know a general idea of where you all are looking to take your individual series and the whole scheme of what All In wants to look like.
I think there is some. I mean, I know Mark and he's such a great guy. And And but I'm an uber nerd, so I'm always keeping one eye open about what's going on in the DC universe. I always want to tie in. I mean, to a fault, it gets me in trouble sometimes. But like, I always want to call. I'll text Josh Williamson like, "Hey, what's going on with this character? Or what can I do with this character?" Or I'll ask my editor all the time, and I'm always trying to bring in characters that haven't been seen in a while, and I'm trying because I like a cohesive universe. I like a big continuity, and I like that they all exist at the same time. It's something in Green Lantern where I'm just like, this can't just be Green Lanterns in space. It has to be all the other space characters have to be in space. And that's been really fun to be able to play with. So with Aquaman, in terms of, I'm always keeping an eye on it. With John Timms, I never worked with him before. I met him for the first time here in New York Comic Con a couple months back. Like the nicest human being ever. And I have a really fun time working with artists because I want them to be excited about drawing the book. And so I really kind of pepper them and ask them what they want to draw. And I'm happy to like try to incorporate that into the book. It's such a huge collaboration. What artists do is to me, it's such a main selling point of the book. When I grew up, if I picked up a book and it could be a great story, but if I opened the page and it didn't look good, I quickly closed the book. I was shallow like that. I'm a shallow man when it comes to comic books.
You're not alone.
It was like, oh man, I can't, you know, I if it looks great, then I'm 1,000% more apt to write it. And it's really fun to work with a new artist and just be able to see what it is that they're really, I don't know if that's the right word, what they're really good at, because he's really good at everything. But like I can give him like 7 panels and he puts them together so they don't feel crushed. Here's a double page spread and it looks very big and it looks powerful. And the way that he's able to do motion like it's underwater, he's very conscientious about what he's drawing. And not that just that, but like Rex on colors and the letter, we just got it. I'm very fortunate. I always feel very fortunate. I was having this conversation last night, and I'm just like, you got to understand that 8-year-old Jeremy is constantly losing his mind. Like it's just like, you did it, you're here. And I'm having such a ball and be able to work with these wizards, as I call artists. I'm like, they're wizards. They're like, I'm putting words down and then they make them come alive is a really fun thing.
Yeah, the first thing I know, again, was looking at some of the preview images and looking at how John was putting Arthur together is
Yeah.
I see a lot of DC animated universe
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
that character. I'm like, that looks like I'm looking at an animated movie because that's how he's
Yeah.
drawing them, and it's
Yeah.
great when he can do
Yeah.
characters that way.
He's great. I mean, he and like I always think about Fernando too. Like they would be really great at doing character design for animation. And then of course, obviously, I'm working with Zermanico and Green Lantern. That's a level. I think
Oh,
I
that's just an entirely different level. I'm just
Yeah, yeah. It's a
awesome.
different thing.
Yeah.
It looks like a movie half the time.
I mean, sometimes not completely, but sometimes with the realism in
Yeah,
some of the drawing,
yeah,
it's almost like it's a branch of what Alex Ross used to do with
yeah, 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 yeah,
drawing
yeah, yeah,
characters
yeah.
so realistic
That's right.
it could almost be a photograph.
Yeah, I agree. I
So
agree.
I would be remiss, Jeremy. One of my editors would kill me if I did not let you know that he is loving Flash Gordon right
Oh,
now.
that's great. I'm
So,
glad to hear it.
yeah, we're both reading it. I've been trying to get him to review it, and he's like, "I'm gonna think about it. I'm thinking about it," because we're both enjoying it, but he is
Uh,
loving it. He is
oh, tell him
loving it.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's been fun to just kind of do something a little different out there.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of a different take.
yeah,
It's a little bit more hard, and
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Totally.
I want to be respectful of time, so I'm going to end this like I normally do with interviews in rapid fire.
Okay, excellent. Let's do it.
Two options. Get to pick one of the two. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. Barry Allen or Wally West?
Wally West,
All right. Guy Gardner or John Stewart?
Guy Gardner.
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
I love Guy Gardner, man.
Aquaman or Black Manta?
Aquaman.
All right. So since we got this coming out in a few weeks, Green Arrow or Green Lantern?
Oh, oh, that's messed up. I'm gonna shake the trees and say Green Arrow.
All right. See, I had a whole new level of respect for Oliver after Absolute Power, seeing
Yeah,
everything he went through. So it was a whole new level of respect. So
I'm a big like arrow guy. Like I mean, like I like bows and arrows and stuff. And like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something innate. I'm like, yeah, no, I dig it. You know,
all right, last one. Justice League Unlimited or Batman the Animated Series?
Justice League Unlimited for me.
Okay.
I
Okay.
love Bruce. I love Bruce, and I love Batman animates. But Justice League Unlimited, I'll tell you why. This is going to get so many people mad. It was like, Dwayne McDuffie had so much to do with so many incredible things, but like Jeffrey Combs as the Question is like the greatest thing ever, and his relationship with the Huntress on there,
Top notch.
because I'm like the only guy that's like, yeah, Wonder Woman and Batman should totally be together. So if I froze, I was talking about Question, Huntress, Wonder Woman, Batman, and John Stewart and what Hawk Woman. Like those, I was like, I was in.
Yeah, I mean, watching John and Kendra together made them, if we were shippers, they wouldn't be my shipping couple.
Right,
John
right,
couldn't be with anybody. They tried with Vixen and everybody else,
right.
but no, John needed to be with Kendra. So yeah,
I
I totally get it.
I agree.
So for the record, everyone, so far Justice League Unlimited is 2-0 versus Batman the Animated Series.
Woo!
So yeah, so Jeremy Adams, thank you so much. How can fans keep up with you if they want to know what's going on in your
Oh
world?
man, you can go to spacekicker.com or you can just find me on usually I guess it's called X or Instagram. I'm on there.
The title is Aquaman. It's out next month. Jeremy Adams, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
So again, I want to thank Jeremy Adams for taking the time to sit with me to talk about Aquaman. Aquaman #1 will be on store shelves this coming Wednesday from DC Comics. Again, if you are a fan of Aquaman, I think you will be very happy with Jeremy Adams' take on Arthur Curry. And if you're not familiar with Aquaman, or if you haven't been a big fan of his, I I actually give it another try. I am not a huge Aquaman fan, but again, after reading the preview issue that I got from DC Comics, I was very excited to see what Jeremy Adams has in store. And so this is the second time he's done that. Actually, the third time, with not only Green Lantern and what he's done with Green Lantern since taking over that, but also what he did on The Flash. Back in Rebirth, I jumped off of The Flash after year one, right before Joshua Williamson got off of it. And Ian Miller, my friend from the Batman universe, he got me back on when talking about the 1 Minute War. And the 1 Minute War was just an awesome arc to close out Jeremy Adams' time on the book. So he has a way of drawing me in. And again, if you're not familiar with Aquaman or haven't been a huge fan of Aquaman, I implore you to pick it up on Wednesday if you can and give it another try. I think you will be very surprised with how this story is going to play out, especially considering the aftermath of Absolute Power, considering Aquaman has picked up Mera's hydrokinesis ability to control water. So we will see how that all plays out. Again, I'm very excited about what's in store for this longtime member of the Justice League. But before we close things out, my top three books. So my top three books, all are from DC Comics. Haven't been that way in a long time, but as a longtime DC Comics fan, I'm happy to see that. First up in the #3 position, Justice League, The Atom Project #1, written by Ryan Parrott and John Ridley, with art from Mike Perkins. Bottom line, we know the aftermath of Absolute Power. Some heroes got all of their powers back, some didn't, some got others, and some normal humans picked up superpowers. Well, Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer, the two atoms of the DC universe, have a theory about how they can correct that, and it all revolves around Captain Atom. Nathaniel Adam, who has kind of been undercover since Absolute Power ended. He doesn't seem to be as willing to serve as he usually has been in the past. But they have this theory on how they can correct all of the wrongs and all of the issues with superheroes and the metas that have either lost their powers or found them in someone else. And so he's the central figure of that. So we will see how the Atom Project works out. But the art, the story, very, very good intro into how they're going to play this out and how Captain Atom plays the huge role in making this theory of Ray Palmer and Ryan Choi work out. And it's really more Ray's theory than it is Ryan's. But very interested to see how this all plays out, because again, we have some superheroes walking around, they don't have all their powers back or any of their powers. We see in Black Lightning how Thunder has a smorgasbord of powers. We see, or as you will see in Aquaman, we talked about it in the interview, Aquaman has taken up some of Mera's powers with controlling water with hydrokinesis. So we'll see how the Atom Project works out and whether or not Ray and Ryan can correct everything within the DC universe and those who have lost their meta abilities. But that is my number 3 book, Justice League, The Atom Project, #1, from John Ridley, Ryan Parrott, and art from Mike Perkins at DC Comics. Now, my number 2 book, and it was really hard coming between number 2 and number 1, but my number 2 book of the week is Absolute Superman #3, written by Jason Aaron with art from Rafa Sandoval. I am quite surprised, and I've already mentioned about how surprised I've been with how good the All In Initiative has been. But that has primarily been with how good the Absolute Universe has been. And while I have absolutely loved what Scott Snyder has been doing in Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman is the best right now of the 3 Absolute titles that are on shelves from DC right now. And what we see in issue number 3 is we get a whole new look in how Clark has come up as a kid living on Krypton, and how Kal-El and his parents are making their way and getting off the planet, and how we see that Science Council actually knew of Jor-El's findings before Jor-El even knew, and were looking to abandon all of the commoners for the elite to leave Krypton and basically allow them to die. But we also see where the L family have their own ship, and this ship is big enough not just for Kal-El and Crypto, but for everyone to leave. So we will see how that plays out. But the other thing that's interesting is at the end, where we find Martha Kent, who is calling out for her child, and she's in the hospital. So I'm excited to see how that's going to all play out. Again, the art from Rafa Sandoval is beautiful. I absolutely love everything about this series. Again, it is my favorite Absolute title that's out there right now. And that's not to say that the other 2 aren't good at all. From Kelly Thompson on Wonder Woman and Scott Snyder on Batman, they're all very good. But Jason Aaron's take on Clark and this title with Absolute Superman has just been really good. It is, again, my favorite of the Absolute titles. But that is my number 3 book, Absolute Superman #3, from Jason Aaron with art from Rafa Sandoval. Now, number 1 book, again, it was tough, but in the end, it came down to 1 page that made this my number 1 book. And that is, of course, Batgirl #3, written by Tate Brombell with art from Takeshi Miyazawa. That 1 double-page spread with Cass just mowing through the League of Assassins on that train. and Shiva running behind her, not only trying to calm Cass down, but to also keep the League of Assassins from going back after her, was just chef's kiss. Perfect. It was an absolute gem with how Takeshi Miyazawa put that together and got it from one end of that double page spread to the other as Cass get into the other train car, and find Angel Breaker and a returning Nessa Ratko, the older daughter of Ra's al Ghul, sister to Talia, in that car waiting for her. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out and how all of these characters play into this role and why the Unburied is coming after Cass and Shiva. But again, I've just been loving everything that Tate Brombell has been doing with this series thus far, 3 issues in, and it has been my book of the week each time it has come out. And yeah, I am a Cassandra Cain fanboy, so that makes me a little biased. But again, that double page spread towards the end of the issue with Cass mowing through the League of Assassins was just perfect, and I absolutely love that sequence from beginning to end as we get into learning more about the cult of Shiva and how all of that plays into why the Unburied is coming after them. But again, that is my number 1 book of the week, Batgirl number 3 from Tate Brombell and Takeshi Miyazawa. All 3 of my favorite books this week coming from DC Comics. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Next time, if you want to hear it before it goes live, you have to come on down to New Orleans. I will be broadcasting live from Fan Expo New Orleans on Sunday, January 12th at 4 p.m. from the creator stage of room 209. I invite you guys to come on down. I'm actually going to be giving away some prizes, so come on down and take your chance on winning some prizes. I'm very excited for this. I've been going to Fan Expo since they've taken over from Wizard World. I've been happy to work with these guys and covering the show each year that they've been here, and I'm very excited that they are going to allow me to bring the podcast to the show and close things out. I'm going to be on stage for 4 p.m. Local guy gets to close things out for the year, and I'm very excited about that. And I invite you guys to come on down if you're going to be in the New Orleans area, especially considering everything that happened on New Year's Day. Come on down, give the city your support. I assure you that everyone will appreciate it, me included, being my hometown. But I'm very excited about my chance of bringing the podcast to everyone there and broadcasting it live from stage. And I'll probably upload it to the web maybe a day or so after that, but I'm excited. So if you're going to be in the New Orleans area, come on down to the New Orleans Convention Center, 4 o'clock, creator stage 209 for Fan Expo New Orleans, and the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast live 4 o'clock on Sunday. I'll see you all there. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Bin Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_bin, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.